hunted by a grizzly. A one-armed Bigfoot begged for help and kindness, spoke back. Alaska shouldn't sound like this. Not in October, not at dawn. The forest was too quiet. No ravens, no jays, not even a pine needle whispering. That's when I heard it. A grizzly's roar deep enough to rattle bone, and another sound that didn't belong to any animal I've ever tracked. A scream, almost human, dragged 2 octaves lower, full of pain and a kind of stubborn will to live. I should have backed away. Every rule says don't walk toward a grizzly fight, but I did. Through the spruce I saw it 9 feet of dark matted hair, one arm ruined and hanging dead, fending off 800 pounds of bear with a broken branch. It wasn't myth. It wasn't a costume. It was real, and it was losing. I didn't raise my rifle. I pulled a flare. Red fire hissed, smoke whipped, sparks leapt. The bear chose the dark. I chose it. We stood there, man, in something the world says doesn't exist, breathing steam into the same cold air. I set water and jerky in the dirt and stepped back. It watched me, then nodded, slow, deliberate, like a thank you. That night I learned the wilderness speaks in more than growls and wind. Sometimes it answers with 3 quiet knocks. If it were you, would you light the flare? Phase 1, silence. That wasn't natural. Alaska has many kinds of silence. Some are gentle, the kind that sits over fresh snow at dawn, peaceful and clean. Some are bitter, the kind that follows the wind when it cuts through dead trees. But that morning I walked into a silence I had never heard before, a silence that felt wrong. I had set out before sunrise, boots crunching over frost-hardened ground, rifle slung over my shoulder. Just another hunting day moose if I was lucky, caribou if fate was kind. I'd walked this route for years. I knew the rhythm of this forest, the quarrel of ravens, the scolding of squirrels, the soft whistle of wind moving through black spruce. But that day the world had its breath held, no wings, no chatter, not even the sigh of branches, only my steps, and a cold that seemed to be listening to me. At first I thought nothing of it. Predators move smaller animals' hide, that's how nature works. But this wasn't fear. This was absence, the kind of emptiness that makes even your heartbeat feel too loud. Instinct whispered, turn back, but need argued louder. I hadn't brought home meat in weeks, and winter was closing in. Hunger is a good liar. It makes you think caution is weakness, and pushing forward is bravery. Sometimes it's just stupidity disguised as courage. The trees grew taller the deeper I went, closing over me like a cathedral of frozen giants. Still no tracks, no fresh scat, no broken twigs. Nothing moved here, not for days. The first sound came an hour in a faint crack in the distance. Not a branch falling, not snow shifting. Too heavy, too sharp, something big. I stopped, crouched, listened. Then I heard it. A roar so deep it felt like the ground rejected it, like the earth itself didn't want to carry the sound. A grizzly. Full grown. Angry. Close. I had heard grizzlies before. This wasn't a warning roar. It was a kill roar, territorial, enraged, merciless. Then something else. A second voice. A scream. But not from any creature I knew. Too low to be human. Too raw to be an animal. It carried something I didn't think existed outside mankind, agony. Fear. Will. My pulse climbed. Every part of me yelled to leave. Get distance. Get cover, survive. That's the law of Alaska. Pick your battles or the mountain picks your grave. But something in that scream cut into me. It wasn't prey. It was a plea. Whatever was fighting that bear wasn't just trying to live. It was begging not to die. I swallowed hard, brought the rifle to my hands, but kept the barrel down. Survival says, don't interfere with a grizzly. Conscience says, don't let something die if you can stop it. I pushed forward. Step by step, through the timber line, each foot placed, slow measured. I moved along a slope using roots as steps, shifting weight to avoid snapping twigs. The cold wind carried the smell of torn earth and something darker blood. The sounds grew louder. A war in the trees. Something big crashed into a trunk, snapping wood like bone. Heavy breaths. A roar that rattled sap from pine. The other creature, whatever it was weakening. Branches thinned ahead, an opening. A clearing. I slid beside a fallen spruce, pressed low, peered through the limbs. And what I saw didn't belong to this world. 9 feet tall, shoulders like carved stone, fur matted dark by blood. One arm useless, shriveled at the shoulder like it had been broken years ago. Fighting on its feet, fighting with cunning, fighting to the last breath. My first thought should have been Bigfoot isn't real. But when death is inches away, the mind doesn't argue with reality, it obeys it. I didn't think, didn't blink. I just knew one thing. That thing wasn't a legend. It was alive, and it was losing. Phase 2, flare against the grizzly. The scene before him looked like a fragment torn from a prehistoric world, raw, brutal, and never meant for human eyes. The grizzly had driven the creature back against a half-fallen spruce, towering over it with murderous power. Blood streaked the beast's fur in long, dark trails. Its left arm hung useless, the shoulder sunken and twisted, the limb withered and dead from old injury. Still, it fought, gripping a broken branch like a spear and swinging with deliberate survival, not fear. This was not a wild animal thrashing in panic. This was a thinking being, trying to stay alive. The bear attacked with terrifying speed, lunging in with a roar that rattled the bones of the valley. The creature twisted away, slowed by pain, barely escaping claws that stripped long gouges from the tree behind it. Bark exploded, wood splintered. Steam burst from its breath as pain rippled through its body, but it stayed on its feet. It refused to fall. For a second, the hunter forgot to breathe. Fear warred with instinct. Instinct told him to back away, quietly put time and distance between himself and death. But something deeper forced him to stay. He recognized something in the creature's eyes, awareness, pain, and something worse, acceptance, as if it knew death personally, as if it had met it before and expected it to return. The bear lunged again, this time faster. The branch snapped in half under the brute force of one massive paw. The creature stumbled, finally collapsing to one knee. It braced with its good arm dragging for breath. The grizzly reared onto its hind legs, towering. One finishing strike and this would be over. The hunter made his decision. He moved not away but forward. He dropped behind a fallen log rifle in hand, but he didn't lift it to shoot. A clean shot could kill the grizzly, but a wounded bear could still kill both of them before it died. And firing a rifle at a myth made of muscle wasn't a gamble he could repeat. Instead, he reached into his pack, his fingers closing around cold metal. A signal flare. Not a weapon, but something worse than a weapon. Fear. He yanked the cap, struck the igniter. The flare roared to life, vomiting fire and sparks into the air, spitting molten light across the snow. A violent red blaze tore through the clearing like a rip in the world. The grizzly froze. Its ears flattened. Its pupils shrank into black knives. The hunter rose from cover, stepping into the clearing not like prey, but like challenge. Red light raged across his face, turning him into a moving inferno. Fire is the one law a bear will not break. He stepped closer. One step, another, and another. The grizzly backed away, snarling, confused rage fighting terror. The flare hissed like something alive, raining sparks into the snow. For 3 eternal seconds, the bear considered a charge. Then it broke. With a furious bellow, it turned and crashed into the forest trees, whipping behind it as it fled into shadow. The valley fell silent again. The flare screamed in his hand like a dying comet. And now he could hear it behind him, breathing heavy, ragged, strained. The creature. Slowly he turned. Red fire washed over the clearing, and standing there was no monster. It stood half upright, leaning against a tree, one hand pressed into the bark for balance. Blood glistened across its fur. Its chest heaved. In its dark eyes sat a storm of instinct and intelligence. It should have attacked him. Any wounded predator on Earth would. Instead, it watched. It understood. He lowered the flare. He didn't speak. Words would have been pointless between them. Instead, he did something older than language. He knelt. Deliberate. Open. He set the flare into the dirt between them, its light now a boundary rather than a threat. Then slowly he placed water and jerky from his pack into the snow. He didn't push it closer. He didn't beckon. He offered. The creature did not move at first, but its gaze flicked from him to the water and back. A long moment passed. Then slowly it reached out, its hand wrapped around the metal canteen. It drank. Long, slow gulps. It did not turn its back to him, not once. Survival never forgets caution. When it lowered the canteen, something passed between them. Not trust. Recognition. The creature held his gaze, and then bowed its head once. A gesture older than civilization. A gesture of thanks. He didn't know it yet, but the forest had just witnessed a beginning, and deep beneath the trees, something answered. Talk, talk, talk. The first 3 knocks. Phase 3. 9 days of bread and stone. The flare died slowly that night, sinking into a hiss of smoke and ember. In the red afterglow, the creature, massive, wounded, breathing like winter wind, turned and vanished between the trees. The hunter didn't follow. Instinct told him that surviving one impossible encounter was already more mercy than he deserved. And yet, when he finally walked away from the clearing, he knew something had changed, because he had looked into the eyes of something the world denied, and it had looked back. He didn't sleep that night, not from fear, but from memory. The nod, the moment of silent recognition, the raw, battered will to survive. He had seen animals fight for food, fight for territory, fight for dominance. This was none of those things. This was a being that fought to live. By morning, frost coated the world in silver. The hunter packed his gear not for hunting this time, but for returning. Not returning would have been easier, wiser, safer. But he couldn't walk away from the thought of that creature bleeding and alone somewhere in the timber, a living legend slowly dying in the dark. So he brought water, and smoked deer meat, and a choice he didn't fully understand yet. He found the trail by instinct, broken trees, churned soil drops of blood already frozen dark. The fight had left a scar across the mountain. He followed it for over a mile until he saw it prints. Not bear, not human, massive, heavy, 2-legged, and then a cave, hidden behind leaning spruce and shadow. He didn't walk straight in. He set food and water at the entrance, then stepped back and waited. Minutes passed, then movement. The shape emerged slowly, like a mountain learning to walk. The creature's breaths were sharp and uneven. Its fur was clotted with blood. One leg dragged weakly. It could barely stand. But it had come forward to meet him. No animal did that. Not a wounded one. Not unless it understood something about mercy. The hunter lowered his gaze, calm, deliberate, and nudged the food closer. The creature ate with effort, each bite a small battle. Then it retreated into the cave again, trust given in rationed fragments. And so began 9 days that did not feel like a miracle, but a quiet, relentless decision. He returned each dawn, every time unsure if the creature would still be alive. He brought what the wild could not give quickly, salt, fat, clean water, warmth. In return, the creature gave nothing but silence. Yet, the silence changed. On day 3, he found the food gone, but also something left behind. A small stone placed carefully where the meat had been. Not dropped, placed. A deliberate act. He frowned, puzzled. The next day he brought more food, and on day 4 there were 2 stones. Different size, same spot. Same. Not coincidence. A pattern, a message, a primitive trade, a system, ritual. On day 5, water-dried meat and a blanket. When he returned that evening, the blanket was gone, but in its place lay something stranger, a short stick carved with shallow lines, 3 groups each with 3 strokes. 3, 3, 3, meaning unknown but intentional. He didn't touch it. Some things deserved respect. By day 6, the creature could stand longer, though pain still bent its massive frame. It watched him now, not like an animal watching a threat, but like a survivor watching possibility. That day, snow fell. The hunter stayed longer than usual, building a small fire at the cave mouth. so the coals could drift inside and warm the den. As night drew close, he stood to leave. Then it happened. Talk, talk, talk. He turned. The creature was inside the cave hand, pressed to the stone floor, tapping 3 slow knocks. One breath of stillness passed between them. The hunter stepped forward and answered. Talk, talk, talk. No words, no promises. But from that moment they shared a vow that did not need language. Day 7 he saw for the first time a flicker of something that felt like peace in the creature's dark eyes. It no longer hid in shadow but stood near the cave entrance as he approached. No fear now, just watchfulness. Day 8. It limped further from the cave, gathering pine and cedar bark, chewing it into paste and pressing it into its wounds. A medicine older than writing. It healed itself with knowledge passed down not in words, but in memory. And on day 9, it waited for him at the ridge above the cave, massive against the morning sky, no longer broken. He didn't wave. Neither did it. Instead, it struck the ground once firm, a single vow. He nodded and struck it 3 times in return. The bond was sealed. Phase 4. Blood on the pines. Trust is not built in a moment. It is revealed in a moment. And that moment came on the 10th day. The hunter didn't plan to return to the ridge. He told himself the creature was strong enough now that nature would finish what he had started. But dawn found him walking the same trail again, carrying fish wrapped in birch bark, no longer survival rations but an offering. But someone else had found the mountain. Boot prints, not his, not alone. 3 sets, heavy tread, deep heel pressure, hunters. He crouched over the trail. Not locals' wrong pattern of boot wear. Outsiders, and from the spacing and stride length, armed and moving fast. They weren't tracking game. They were tracking something. His blood went cold. He followed instincts burning now. The deeper he went, the clearer the signs became: cigarette ash, a torn scrap of camouflage, a boot scuff on stone. And then he heard voices. He dropped low behind a deadfall of spruce and listened. You see the prints, I told you this ain't no bear. We catch this thing alive, we don't ever work again. Don't care what it is. If it bleeds, it can be chained. Not hunters, poachers. The kind that didn't come for meat. The kind that came for trophies, headlines, black market money. They carried rifles, but not for killing. They carried tranquilizer launchers, cable snares, shock rods. They wanted something alive. The hunter felt a cold weight settle in his gut. They were talking about him, about it. They called the creature a thing. To them, wonder was something to be dragged behind a truck. He kept moving, silent, controlled, closing the distance to the cave. If the creature wasn't already gone, he had minutes, maybe less. But the forest moved before he did. A man stepped out from behind a cedar as if he had grown from the bark itself. An older native tracker, weathered skin, hawk eyes, earth in his voice. Turn back, the man said. The hunter didn't reach for his rifle. I can't. You don't know what walks here. I do, he said. The man's eyes narrowed. No, you've only seen it. There's a difference. Branches snapped above. Voices spread through the trees. The poachers were circling. The tracker spoke again, quiet and final. If you stand with them, the mountain will spit your bones back out. If you stand alone, you will die before sunset. Decide now. A roar shattered the ridge. Not a bear. Not human. Bigfoot. The hunter broke into a run before his mind caught up. Through branches, over stone, toward the clearing above the cave, toward the sound. He reached it and froze. They had found it. The creature was on one knee, roaring in fury. 3 trank darts buried deep in its side. It swayed, but refused to fall. A cable snare was locked around its torso, held by 2 men straining to hold ground. Another man reloaded a tranquilizer rifle, aiming for the heart. The poachers had no idea what they were trying to chain. Rage lit the hunter's chest like wildfire. He stepped into the open. Let it go, he said. 3 rifles turned toward him. Their laughter was thin and ugly. You lost, pal. He didn't answer. He kept walking straight at them. Stop right there. He didn't, so the man fired. The dart missed by inches, thudding into a pine trunk. The hunter didn't flinch, didn't slow. A second dart came. He knocked it aside with his forearm. The third never fired because he slammed into the shooter, driving him into the dirt. The cablemen buckled. The creature strained, dragging them forward like dogs behind a plow. Chaos detonated. Another poacher swung a shock rod. The hunter ducked left, tackled low, drove him hard into a rock. Breath exploded from lungs. Bones cracked. Pain erupted across his ribs. He rolled away just in time to avoid a tranq dart in the spine. He had no weapon now. Didn't need one. This was not a hunt. This was war. The snare snapped, torn clean apart. The creature surged up in a storm of muscle and fury, ignoring tranquilizers, ignoring blood loss. It wasn't fighting for survival anymore. It was fighting for him. A poacher screamed as he was lifted and thrown like dead weight. Another stumbled back, staring at his rifle as if it had betrayed him. The last man dropped his gun and tried to run. He made it 6 steps. Talk, talk, talk. The sound stopped him cold. The creature struck the ground with its fist, 3 slow, heavy knocks. Snow trembled. Wind shifted. The forest answered. Far away, 3 deep knocks returned. Not an echo. A reply. The hunter didn't know how many were coming, but the poachers did, because that was not the sound of prey. That was tribe, and the mountain had just called its own. Phase 5. The vow of the white tribe. Night fell slow over the mountain, as if the sky itself feared what waited in the dark. The poachers had fled in terror, swallowed by a forest that no longer tolerated their presence. The hunter stood in the clearing, bruised blood in his mouth, breath shaking. The creature, wounded but unbroken, stood beside him. But they were not alone. A shape moved between the trees. Then another. Then 30. Figures emerged from the forest in silence, giants between cedar and shadow. Massive forms, taller and broader than the wounded one. Their fur carried the weight of storms, scars of old battles, and wisdom older than the first axe to cut into these lands. The hunter did not raise his hands. He understood instantly this was not a rescue. This was a reckoning. They surrounded the clearing without forming a circle. Circles are for traps. This was something else. This was witnessing. At their center came one unlike the others. Taller fur touched with white, not by age, but by mark. A crest of braided cedar hung across its chest. Eyes like iron under snow. The white elder. It approached the wounded creature and placed a massive hand over its chest, not to heal, not to claim, but to honor. A low sound rolled from its throat, not language but lineage. Then it turned to him. The human. The intruder who broke the rules of nature. The only one who stayed. The hunter felt the weight of 36 ancient eyes watching his soul. He did not speak. Speech would have been an insult. Instead, he waited. The white elder stepped forward close enough that the earth trembled beneath each step. It knelt, slowly, deliberately, one knee in the soil. Not submission, recognition. It reached down and touched the earth. Tuck, tuck, tuck. 3 gentle knocks. The mountain held its breath. The hunter understood. He knelt too and answered. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Around them 30 giants pressed their fists to the soil. The sound came slow and heavy, moving like thunder through stone. They were not a species. They were a people. And they had chosen. The white elder rose. It lifted one hand, not in threat but in oath, and reached toward him. In its palm rested something simple, something eternal. A ring of braided cedar bound with pine fiber and a single strand of white hair. He did not need translation. This was not a gift. This was a bound pact, a covenant older than words. What you protect will protect you. What you honor will endure. This ground will remember you. He accepted. And for the first time since the world forgot them, the forest accepted a human in return. The 3 knocks remain. Dawn rose without sound over the mountain, a thin silver light sliding through the pines. The forest was no longer hostile. It was watching awake, aware like something old had opened its eyes. The hunters were gone. The mountain had judged them, and the bond that began with fire and blood now stood unbroken. The man stood alone in the clearing where everything had changed. No tracks remained, not from the giants, not even his own. The wind had erased them all, as if to say, this was never meant for the world outside. He turned to leave, but paused. On a stone exactly where he had knelt the night before lay a small object. Simple, primitive, powerful. A second cedar ring. He understood. The first had been acceptance. This one was trust. He placed it over the first, and in that quiet moment something in him changed forever. He had come into this wilderness as a hunter. He would leave it as a keeper of a secret older than iron and fire. He looked back one last time. The clearing was empty, but the feeling was there, a presence just beyond sight, watching not as a threat, but as a guardian. He didn't speak. He simply raised his hand and gently tapped the ground. Talk, talk, talk. From somewhere deep in the forest, carried by wind and pine and distance, a reply came. Talk, talk, talk. He smiled once quietly, because now he knew Bigfoot was never a myth. It was a promise kept by the wild. And some promises are not written in books or carved in stone. Some are kept by heart fire and 3 quiet knocks in the trees. If this story made you believe that kindness has a language of its own, leave a comment with the city you're listening from and rate this story from 0 to 10. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next legend. The 3 knocks are still in the forest. Talk, talk, talk.